Bradley, you really like the David Brooks clip, which I don't know. You get dealer's choice here, but I saw you both put this on the sound sheet and personally DM'd it to me this weekend. So I'm gonna ask what you liked about it.
I just think it's so funny that the infrastructure surrounding PBS NewsHour was like, we got to let David on to address the tweet.
I mean,
we have to give him at least the floor to let us know what he was thinking.
You know, that's important because David Brooks doesn't have a platform to speak out about. Oh, wait, he is a New York Times columnist, and he is not an underserved voice by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, his voice is completely overserved. We have way too much of center-right David Brooks's belief system centered around food in the ecosystem. It's just too much at this point.
They're talking about this in like the PBS NewsHour like office like style tone, as if he like literally said a slur and has to like address it. And I just love the piety surrounding this tweet of his burger.
All right. Well, here he is addressing the controversy. And like, does he admit that he was drunk tweeting? Because that seems pretty clear. Well,
no, they don't make him show the receipt. They don't do nothing. This is like
they're helping.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a real investigation. This is like some sort of PR junket, or for him to like save face over like something he could have just ignored and moved on and talk about real shit.
Yeah.
David, before we go, I want to ask you about this tweet that you put out this week, where, and we can put this up on screen. You posted this tweet that showed dinner that you were having at an airport and that it cost $78. And you wrote, "This is why the American people think the economy is terrible." You got roughed up a little bit online about this, but I'm just curious more about what you were trying to convey with that.
Yeah, well, first it started out hatched in my mind as a joke, because if you looked at what I was eating, it was bourbon and a very fattening hamburger and fries. So it's
delicious dinner.
I can't afford to make bad lifestyle choices. But the problem with the tweet, which I wrote so stupidly,
also,
was that it made it seem like I was oblivious to something that is blindingly obvious. What? That an upper middle class journalist having a bourbon at an airport is a lot different than a family living paycheck to paycheck. And when I'm getting sticker shock,
are you still drunk?
It's like an inconvenience. When they're getting sticker shock, it's a disaster.
Sticker shock?
And so I was insensitive. I screwed up. I should not have written that tweet. I probably should not write any tweets. But
that's advice we should all be.
Yeah,
do you have any drinks this morning?
I made a mistake, and it was stupid. But the one point that is maybe can be drawn, if anything, can.
Oh, good, we're drawing.
Was, you can experience inflation as a chart with downward slope. Inflation's coming down, but the way we experience inflation day to day is as that moment of sticker shock. You're in the grocery store, you're at the gas station, and suddenly costs something way more than you anticipated. And for people who are less fortunate than I am, that is a disaster. And so you have to understand why we say inflation's coming down, but for people living and seeing those sticker shock moments, it doesn't feel that way.
So, David, was it a joke, or were you trying to make a broader claim about inflation? It was not. I mean,
it started out as a joke, but there was a wisdom to it, actually.
But wait, was it a joke? One conclusion.
He said he started out like in his brain.
It started as a joke,
but then he tweeted it thinking that there was some sort of like wisdom to what he was saying.
Yes, because he still can't help himself, because like this guy's brain works in one way. It is taking anecdote and then making some sort of free market, like center-right economic argument about it, so dumbed down and so watered down for the readers of the New York Times. I don't even have anything else to add on this front.
I just really love that he's sort of stumbling over his words a little bit in this, as Matt mentioned, kind of slurring a little bit, trying to cover all of his bases by saying it's a joke, but then by also being like, but if you really look at the words and you think about someone who maybe was not as fortunate as I, who ordered a triple bourbon at the Newark airport, what would they think if 2/3 of their tab was booze?
Yeah, that's not.
Leading to a $78
like the thing is if you itemize it, it was all booze. It was the burger actually wasn't for.
What if he got a Coke? Do you
for
think it
a restaurant?
$78?
I mean, those restaurants pay a lot of money to be the exclusive sort of eats in restaurants. So like
or in airports.
In airports, yeah. So I'm not. It's not. To be honest, like once you take out the Johnny Walker Blue or whatever he had there, like it wasn't actually it was a lot, but it was what you would expect from an airport. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, when I go to the airport and I do a sit-down meal there, I'm not expecting to get a deal. Like, if I do go there and do that, I mean, I used to do that a little bit more when I had a corporate credit card, but now it's more like going to that new LaGuardia Shake Shack.
His was on the corporate credit card too.
I'm sure it was, but which makes the subject of the complaint, even more hilarious.
Like generally speaking, yeah. Like I think like there's a certain type of person who says, look at our inflation compared to the G7. What is everybody complaining about? Like Joe Biden hasn't done enough, and it's like, well, look at apartments.
Yeah.
Or how much am I have to pay? But would
he like to make a case about greedflation and the corporate gouging in certain situations? To Matt's point,
right.
Airport, because those restaurants buy into these airports so that they can get service people there, they make their prices a little bit higher.
Yeah.
And corporations in the midst of COVID realized that they could do that for a long period of time to juice profits while still blaming the pandemic. That's now been quite established. But David Brooks has never dealt with that. In fact, his ilk called those claims from the left conspiracy theories. Yep. So if he wants to keep making claims about the United States economy, perhaps he should do a little bit more due diligence than having a drink or two and drunk tweeting at the airport to make claims about society. Yeah,
because like when I hear people like David Brooks talk about how inflation isn't under control yet, I don't think they're like joining me and saying, yeah, we need to attack some of these life essentials that have been going up for not just during the pandemic, but like the whole time. But he's actually saying, I support the Fed in their interest rates.
Yeah, right. Antonin Scalia's ghost. I love getting dressed up in my Sunday best and taking a trip to Logan Airport in Boston to eat at world-class D'Angelo's. Congressional baseball fan. I don't care about David Brooks unless he is a tag team match with Thomas Friedman against a made-up $78 hamburger and a cab driver. Dave from Jamaica. Man, liquor inflation is really affecting tweets these days. Frank Blunt's Brooks is on the Giuliani diet and is going to go broke too. Custodial artist. Wow, comedy is really dead. You can't drunk tweet X Twix about.
But that's the thing is like I thought it was a joke at first because I thought he was like very clearly including the alcohol. But like this sort of like halfway, I'm serious about it, but it was a joke thing. It's just like,
yeah, it's annoying.
How much does he get paid?
But that's I think his real like if you could call them strengths, it's not really strength. I just mean like the crux of his work, I feel like is like, and I would say most people on the New York Times editorial board or op-ed board is to like have a half-baked idea that you're like not really willing to fully own, publish it, then sort of backtrack on it, but be like, but if you actually read it, you would have, if you actually engaged with the text,
you would get where I was coming from. Because it's all about a feeling.
You're taking it a little too seriously and being a little overly sensitive about it, but if you really engage with the text like you were supposed to, you would have gotten something from it. Like that's like the Jonathan Chait, Thomas Friedman, David Brooks playbook.
100%.
He was in the news for drawing a couple salaries, not just for the New York Times, which on average is $100,000 per columnist. I imagine it's higher for David Brooks, but he was also pulling a second salary from a Facebook. Brooks takes an additional salary for his work with the Aspen Institute's Weave project. Is this where you're learning about how the inflation's hitting the common man, which he started in May 2013. In 2018, Facebook gave $250,000. $250,000 to Washington D.C. think tank for Weave. Have you heard of Weave?
I have not.
Just getting $250,000 from Facebook for something nobody's ever heard of.
And that's what we know publicly.
And you can't.
And anyway, the $70 bar tab. I'm going to tweet about it.
That just simply can't go into the balance sheet. It's just not. It's not feasible.
Nope.